Hey, welcome to this new video. In this video we will have a look at the new geometry nodes node, the extrude node and the insert node. So these are two very interesting nodes and you can get them if you go into the Blender website onto downloads, and this is currently experimental. So the Blender 3.1 alpha here, and if you download this you have the nodes in your geometry nodes add menu. So nice. So I will use the Blender launcher, and here you can download the 3.1 here on daily and downloads. It's just the same as the Blender website but a bit more organized. So you can download it if you want, it's free. So here you can download the 3.1. It's not showing for me because I have it already in my library, the newest build of Blender 3.1 alpha, and we can launch it. So let's start. So we have here the default cube. We can delete everything, and we will be making something like this, and for this we will need a plane. Maybe we want to scale it up 10 times. For scaling you will use the shortcut S and then type 10, and then we want to raise this window up because we want to go into the geometry nodes editor, and here we can collapse this window because we don't need it, and we can click on new to create a new node tree. So here we have our group input and our group output, and between there runs the geometry. And first of all, we want to add a new node in here. So with Shift A, you can add a new node here, and we want to go under the mesh, and we want to subdivide our mesh a few times. Let me check if you, yes, I can make wireframe on so you can see. We will be subdividing our mesh here, and then we will be using a new node, and this will be the scale elements node. And we can grab that. What this node does, it scales everything because everything is connected. But if we would take and split edges node before it, you can see it scales everything based on its origin. And we can even use this as an effect, but we can make a bit more with it. So we can use another new node, the Extrude Mesh node, and we can bump it here, and you can see we've just extruded our meshes, or our geometry, and you can see here the top is gone, and this is something that's normal, it's not a bug. You have to join it back with our original geometry, our plane, like this. So now we can extrude this mesh, and we can decrease this number to have some little cubes. We could also distribute them, but this is a bit faster and it's one mesh, so nice. So now what we can do, we could use randomization on these. So with the random value node, we can modify the width of them or the height, so they have individually heights. So you can use this for a fast cityscape, just like that. And you can even use them on both. And if you want to have more randomization, just use two of them and change one seed. And then you have something like this. But we can go even further with this. So I will not use a randomization. I will be using points that I scattered here, and I want to use it so around every point these cubes will go slightly down, so that we have a nice parametric pattern here. So let us do this. So we want to use our plane here from the beginning, and we want to scatter on this plane some points, just like that. Something like this. We don't need as much points. And I want to use the poison disk because I want to have a certain distance around every point, so they are not as random, just something like that. And then we can put the whole thing a bit up, so we can do this with the transform node, like this. And we can join it back in with our original geometry. Da-dum. And I want to raise them a bit up. So now we want to modify them so they are floating here on the top, so that they push these boxes down. So how can we do this? How can we modify the position of our objects? We can go into the geometry submenu, and there we have the set position node, and we can use it on here, and with this we can modify the position. But how can we now make it cyclic? So for this we can use, first of all, we have a new node in the inputs, the scene time node. So it outputs just the same as we did earlier, the hash frame driver. We don't need this anymore because we have now the scene time node. It's just outputting at frame 0, the frame 0, at frame 20, the frame 20, and with this we can make animations. So I want to grab an combine XYZ node, like this, so we can modify the axis separately, and I'll want to use a math node set to sine. So because if we just plug the frame in here, you can see they are endlessly floating. We want them to stay in a certain distance. So we take a sine, and now they're just going crazy on a certain distance. So we can lower it if we would take a before, and we want to divide it. So I was getting a comment about I shouldn't take a divide because it's not working. I don't know how much is true, but Blender crashed never when I use a divide. You can write if there's something right on that comment, but you can. So if you divide by 20, you can also multiply by 0.2, right? 0.02, sorry. Yes. So yes, it's the same, but divide is more clearly to understand what it does. It divides, basically. So I will use a divide. You can use a multiply just to slow down and make the number smaller that comes out of our scene time node. And then the last thing we will be using is we want to use something after the sine to make them not as much aggressive, just like that. And then we want to have a different speed for all of them. So we will be using a random value node, and just like that it works. So I will use it on the max, and nice. So we can currently see they are all starting on one point. I don't want this, so I will be using an add before this, so set this to a large number and there. And now what we can do, we can make the stairs a lot more, and maybe we can scale them a bit down. And then we can use a geometry proximity node because we want to calculate the distance from our points. So we will be using in the geometry submenu the geometry proximity node, just like that. And with that node, we can define our extrude. And now you can see, yay, it works. Wonderful. So let me reorganize this a little bit here. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Just like that. So we can use a map range node after the geometry proximity node to ease this a little bit out. So a map range set to smoother step like this, and we want to make the effect a bit larger. Maybe smooth step, so it's not as much. So I might make it even slower, so it's not as chaotic. So currently there are only points, but we want to instance something on them, so we are converting basically on every point there should be an object, and I want to use the icosphere. And they're way too big, so I will scale them down like that. And this is great. So now we can make the material. So for the material, I will go into cycles, and I want to use the GPU compute. And we want to have an sky texture, because sky textures are great if you don't have an HDRI. And I want to go into the shader editor. I could have just modified it here, but anyways, I will be dropping the ozone completely up, and I will no, something like that maybe. No, the ozone shouldn't be as, yes, you can play around here a bit with the textures. For this I want to have a new material, and let me check if this, yes, it works. So we will be using subsurface scattering here, because, so I leave this on white because it looks interesting, and I will be using, no, I leave it there. And we don't want to change the color and not the subsurface color either, because I have a trick that I want to show you. Because you have your subsurface radius, and with this you can modify the color of this object, but you have to guess what this is. So there's a trick for it. So you can use an RGB input node, and you can just plug this into here, and now it will be displaying the color that you input here. So No, just like that. So I will be using the random walk fixed radius, and then I want to have it a bit more sunset, so I lower this and I will maybe something like this should work. So I will be using some contrast on here. Something like that maybe. So, and let me make this full subsurface scattered. We want to have them black. And what if we would, no. Yes, we can make this a bit darker. So this will be a nice effect. And now we want to have the data from our proximity node because we want to have the color here on the bottom blue and on the top it should be remaining orange. And for this we will be outputting it out of geometry nodes. So if you don't understand this yet, this is not a beginner tutorial. So you can watch my Vector Wonderland series. There I explain geometry nodes from ground up. You can watch this, I link you it here, and then you can watch it and then you understand importing things and exporting things out of geometry nodes. So I will plug the geometry proximity node data into the group output, and then I'll define an attribute. So I call it prox because of proximity. It's near. And then I will be using an attribute input node, and I will be pulling the prox in our shader node. And now with this, we can use a mix RGB node here. And we want to have it so this should be blue, right? And this should be orange. Also right? Yes. And then I will be using a color ramp to decrease our contrast here. So how does it look like? Not much of a difference, but no, you can see it a little bit here. So I can increase. Yes, you can see it a little bit. Like this. It should be working. So what if we will plug? This could also be, but this is too aggressive. So I have to saturation and do this a bit down, and also the value just like that. And then I want to use another material for our spheres. So we will be using a set material node, and I will be creating another material called glass, and I will be use that one here. And then we want to make it a glass, so turn the transmission on, and I don't want to have roughness. And this is not shaded smooth, so it looks like that. So we want to grab the set shade smooth node, and it works. So I'll increase the I decrease the IOR, so they're looking a bit more realistic, and this is nice. So the last thing we maybe want to have is that we want to have some volume. So I'll create a cube. Where is it? There it is. And I will be creating a material and the surface should be gone. And on the volume, I want to have the principled volume. And you have to when you're in an object, there is a bug, so the volume is not showing, so you have to go out of the object and then it is there like magic. And I want to decrease the effect of our volume. And I want to change this so we have the colorful sky reflecting in our just like that. So now it looks like that. And this is a bit too much. Yes, like this. And wonderful. So now we can use a camera. I think it's a bit too much. Yes, this can be a bit less. Just like that. And we can use a camera and we can point this towards here. And we can select it, and I want to check depth of field. And I want to look here if I can focus this part. And yes, and then I will do like this and maybe decrease it a bit. And then we will go into rendering. So I will use maybe 200 samples, and we don't need as much light paths. We don't need reflective and refractive. Fast GI is always good. Set to 2. And in the performance we want to have persistent data on. And then we can hit render. So now it's rendered. So we can go into compositing and we can use a denoiser if you want to, but so this was it. This was the nice tutorial. I think it's a nice, and you can do a lot more with this two nodes, Extrude Mesh node and Scale Elements. I think we will use them all the time, and I think there will be coming more tutorials on those nodes or with those nodes. And thanks for watching. So comment of the week is from Shawn, and he commented this nice comment. Thanks for that. It was on the Every Nodes in Geometry Nodes part 3. You can watch this if you want to know every node in Geometry Nodes and what these are doing. And thank you all for watching. You can check out my Gumroad if you want to. There I have the Disney inspired rose pattern or the Skyfire shield, text animation, particularizer effect, everything made in Geometry Nodes. The Christmas tree, fireworks and ivy. This is all made in Geometry Nodes, and you can watch here if you want to have something. And thank you all for watching. See you later, alligator.